So Matt Miller just dropped a full 7-round mock draft, which means we get a fresh look at what the Bears could do. And there's a big name in play at number 10, Ashton Jeanty. Miller calls this the best-case scenario for Chicago. Hard to argue with that. Let's take a look at how the top 10 played out in this mock. Cam Ward goes number 1, Abdul Carter at number 2. That's pretty much locked in at this point. Miller still has Shedeur Sanders at number 3, which, if you're a Bears fan, is probably what you're hoping for. Travis Hunter at number 4, Mason Graham at number 5, and then the Raiders take Tetairoa McMillan at number 6. That's a big one, because if the Raiders go with a different position, jeanty might not be there for Chicago. Rounding it out, Armand Mims to the Jets at number 7, Jalen Walker to Carolina at number 8, and J.B. Barron to the Saints at number 9. So the Bears are sitting there at number 10 with options. Jeanty is still on the board. Will Campbell and Tyler Warren are also available. But if you're all in on jeanty, then you're rooting for quarterbacks and defensive players to fly off the board early. Now, let's talk about the player. Production? Check. Heisman runner-up? Check. Clean off the field? Absolutely. Jeremy Fowler reported that teams see him as one of the highest character guys in this draft. No red flags, no concerns about keeping him in line, just a guy who checks every box. And Chicago values that. We've seen it before when they passed on a guy like Jalen Carter over character concerns. Now, let's pivot to round 2. Kenneth Grant, a name that's been floating around as a possible steal, falls to number 39. Miller says Grant would bring power and quickness to Chicago's defensive line, even after adding Grady Jarrett in free agency. The Bears have improved up front, but adding Grant could take them to another level. And let's be real, if Grant is there at number 39 and Chicago passes on him, that's a mistake. He's got top 20 talent. If he's on the board, you make that pick. No hesitation. Let's talk about Kenneth Grant. Taking him at number 10 would be a reach, but at number 39, that's a steal. He's a dominant run stopper, and his pass rush ability is better than people think. He may not turn into Dexter Lawrence, but the upside is there. The quickness, the fluidity. Those traits aren't common for a guy over 330 pounds. We saw it at Michigan. He can push the pocket, clog up the run game, and make an impact right away. Now picture this defensive line. Grady Jarrett, Gervon Dexter, Andrew Billings, and Kenneth Grant. You don't have that one elite game wrecker, but you've got 4 guys who can get after it. That kind of depth makes life easier for Montez Sweat on the edge. It gives DeMarcus Walker some flexibility to play inside or out. You throw in a young edge rusher later in the draft, and suddenly, Chicago's front looks dangerous. If the Bears land Grant at number 39, that's a pick worth celebrating. Then, at number 41, another strong option, Xavier Watts from Notre Dame. He's been a playmaker the last 2 years, a team captain, and a ball hawk with 13 interceptions. He was a key part of Notre Dame's championship-caliber defense, and he'd bring that same intensity to Chicago. Safety might not seem like an urgent need, but look at the situation. 2 starters could hit free agency next year. Jaquan Brisker has already dealt with multiple injuries. Kevin Byard is 32. How much longer can you count on him? Don't be surprised if the Bears grab a safety on day 2, whether it's at number 39, number 41, or maybe number 72 in the 3rd round. Between Grant and Watts, who's the better pick? Grant feels like a first-round talent, so if you get him in the 2nd, that's tough to beat. But Watts is a rock-solid choice as well. Either way, Chicago would be adding 2 impact players on defense. Now we get to the part of the draft where things get a little questionable. Jacob Parrish, the Kansas State corner, goes at number 72. Look, I like the player. 3rd or 4th round feels about right for him. But if 2 of your first 3 picks are non-trench guys, you'd really like to see that next pick go to the offensive or defensive line. This one just doesn't feel like the best use of resources. Matt Miller's reasoning? He suggests Tariqa Stevenson could be on the hot seat. And yeah, there's truth to that. This is a make-or-break year for him. If he struggles, his future with the team is absolutely in doubt. But does that mean you need to grab a corner this early? Not necessarily. Chicago has depth. Jaylon Johnson is a legit number 1. Kyler Gordon is one of the best nickel corners in the game. Terrell Smith has played meaningful snaps. Nick McLeod is a solid depth piece and a strong special teamer. So, unless you're completely out on Stevenson, spending this pick on another corner feels unnecessary. Now, if you want to take a corner on day 3, no problems. But at num 72, when there are real needs in the trenches, this pick feels like a miss. And when you look at who was still on the board, that feeling gets even stronger. Arante Urser, still available. Could compete at left tackle, at worst be a strong backup, and maybe develop into a starter down the road. Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau, both still on the board. Princely Umanmielen from Ole Miss, still there. Jonah Savaya, the versatile lineman from Arizona, available? All of those guys would have made more sense here. This isn't about knocking Jacob Parrish. He's a good player. But taking back-to-back DBs on day 2? That's not the best strategy. Chicago's first 3 picks in this mock were great. But this one? It's a miss. Go get a trench player instead. Plenty of them were still there. Now, moving into the 5th round, Elijah Badger, the wide receiver out of Florida. Elijah Badger, he's been on the radar in a few Bears mock drafts, though it's been a while. Solid production over the last 3 years. In 2022 and 2023 at Arizona State, then last year at Florida. Pretty consistent, around 800 yards each season. One interesting note, he spent a year with Jaden Daniels before Daniels transferred to LSU. Last year at Florida, he didn't see as many targets, but the efficiency? Off the charts. Over 20 yards per catch on 39 receptions. That tells you he's got legit big play ability. At 6'1", 200 pounds, running a 4.43, that's good speed. On day 3, he's the kind of guy you take a shot on. Could be a solid backup with some vertical threat ability. Then there's Luke Lachey, the Iowa tight end. He's been linked to Chicago in a lot of late-round projections. Decent blocker, reliable hands. Probably a TE3 or TE4 as a rookie. A developmental guy. But there's something there. Finally, Miles Hinton, the offensive lineman out of Michigan. Started last year after being a part-time guy before that. When you're talking about 7th-round picks, it's all about development. No guarantees these guys make the team, but you take a swing and see if you can coach them up. So, overall, how would you grade this mock draft from ESPN's Matt Miller? A, B, C, D, F. Drop your grade. For me, it's a B+. I really like what he did overall. The first 3 picks, outstanding. Ashton Jeanty, love it. Kenneth Grant at num 39, that's highway robbery. Best value pick in the draft if that happens. Xavier Watts at number 41, great fit. But if you're taking a safety or another DB at number 41, you can't double down at number 72. That's where this draft lost me. There were too many high-quality trench players still available, and Chicago's secondary is in a good spot for now. That pick dragged the grade down from an A to a B+. Still, those first 3 guys would come in and contribute right away. And Badger in the 5th is intriguing. The only real misstep was Jacob Parrish in the 3rd round. Just didn't make sense given the options available.